Hey everyone, before we dive in, if you love stories about standing up for yourself and finding your own kind of happy, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow. Now, let's get into today's story. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee in my little Seattle apartment when my phone vibrated on the counter. One quick message from Mom glowed on the screen. This year it's just your sister's family coming. No reason, no invite for me, not even a question mark. I stared at it while the steam curled up around my face, then typed back a single word that felt colder than the rain outside. Enjoy. What they never bothered to find out, what they never once asked, was that I own a gorgeous $2 million home hidden away in the peaceful Vermont woods. And this year, I wasn't going to sit around hoping for a place at their table. Hi, I'm Emily. For most of my 34 years, I've been the quiet, reliable one, the person my family trained me to be. People always tell me I seem calm and pulled together no matter where I am. What they don't see is that calm was something I learned because the louder someone else got, the more I had to disappear. I grew up in a neat neighborhood right outside Seattle, the kind where everybody waves and the lawns are always perfect. Mom, Claire, kept our front porch spotless, like it was proof we had everything under control. Inside those walls, the roles were set long before I ever understood them. Claire absolutely adored my little brother, Tyler. She never hid it. You could hear it every time her voice went soft for him and sharp for me. Dad, Mark, wasn't mean. He was just steady in a way that never leaned toward me. He valued hard work, but somehow my hard work never seemed to count. I still remember being 8, scrubbing the kitchen after dinner while Mom raced Tyler to soccer practice. I remember running forgotten homework to school when he got suspended for fighting. I remember the night I found him on the bathroom floor, shaking from something he never should have taken, and calling for help while Mom's voice shook with anger at me for making everything worse. When Tyler came home from rehab, the backyard was full of balloons, neighbors, and a huge welcome home banner. When I got accepted into an amazing college at 17, Mom put a loaf of banana bread on the counter and said, "Peace and quiet, just the way you like it." I used to think that was normal, that if I just stayed calm enough, worked hard enough, one day they'd finally see me. But in my family, attention was a spotlight that only moved when Tyler did. Years later, when I got engaged, the pattern showed up again. Mom asked me to change my wedding date because it was too close to Tyler's birthday. At the engagement party, he rolled in 2 hours late with music blasting, pulling every eye in the room like he was gravity itself. I still remember the confused, hurt look on my fiancé's face. He didn't stick around much longer after that. And honestly, neither did the version of me that kept pretending everything was fine. Last Thanksgiving was the last clue I let myself ignore. I brought someone new, Nathan, a kind history teacher who actually asked about my dreams instead of my to-do list. Mom sat us at a little side table for convenience, even though there were empty chairs at the main one. When I mentioned I just bought my first house, Dad gave a vague nod, then immediately asked Tyler about his latest podcast idea. That night, Nathan looked at me like he was saying, "You deserve so much better." And for the first time, I knew he was right. But old habits die hard. This year, when Mom's text came, "Just your sister's family," I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask why. I just stood in my kitchen, listening to the fridge hum and the rain tapping the window, and felt something quietly unwind inside me. The old me, the one who always made room, always understood, always adjusted, stepped aside. And the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like room to breathe. I walked out onto my balcony, coffee getting cold in my hand, and left the phone face down inside. Those few words had finally done what years of hoping never could. They drew a clean, sharp line between what I was afraid to lose and what had never really been mine. I went back in, opened my laptop, and pulled up the file I'd looked at 100 times. Property deed. Willow Haven. My name, my signature, and my grandfather George's neat handwriting transferring the whole $2 million estate to me years ago. A big, beautiful house wrapped in pine trees and early snow, completely legally mine. They never asked about it. Never noticed the property taxes I paid every year. Never wondered why I disappeared to Vermont every winter. To them, it was just Grandpa's old cabin. To me, it was the one place I'd ever felt truly seen. I stared at the satellite map for a long time. The little blue lake, the winding driveway, the long rectangle of the house tucked behind the trees. Then the thought arrived, clear and complete. I don't need their table. I can set my own. I opened a new document and started a guest list. First name, Aunt Laura. She always pulled me into the biggest hugs at family parties and whispered, "You doing okay, sweetie?" when nobody else noticed I wasn't. Her reply came in minutes, name the day. Bags already half packed. Next, my cousin Ryan. We barely talk anymore, but years ago when Tyler had one of his blow-ups, Ryan was the only one who muttered, "I'm sorry you always have to clean up the mess." When I called, he laughed quietly and said, "Thanksgiving without the chaos." I'm there. Then Sarah, my best friend who showed up with tea and blankets the night Nathan left. I sent the invite. She answered with a screenshot of her plane ticket and the words, "Choosing joy this year." Last, I hesitated over one more name. Lily, my 8-year-old niece, Tyler's little girl, the only kid who ever looked at me like I was magic instead of the family fixer. I sent a short message to her mom, Grace, not expecting much. Grace called an hour later. "Lily saw your message," she said softly. She cried happy tears. "She wants to come, and if it's okay, I'd love to come too." Something warm bloomed in my chest. "There's plenty of room," I told her. That night I booked a flight and packed a suitcase. For years I'd waited for someone to save me a seat. This time I was building the entire table myself. I landed at Willow Haven 3 days before Thanksgiving, cheeks stinging from the cold Vermont air as I hauled my bags up the stone steps. The house looked exactly like I remembered: tall pines, wide porch, quiet and proud. I stood there for a minute listening to the wind in the trees and felt something inside me finally click into place. Inside smelled like cedar and wood smoke. I built a fire in the big stone fireplace and watched the flames chase away years of cold. The next morning I got to work, airing out guest rooms, sweeping the porch, laying one long white tablecloth across the dining table that faces the windows. One table. No side tables. No ranking. Everyone equal. By afternoon, the gravel crunched under tires. Aunt Laura stepped out holding a homemade pie and the biggest smile. "Your grandpa would be over the moon," she said, voice cracking as she hugged me tight. Ryan showed up next with 2 bottles of wine and a little bag of dried lavender. "Figure the house could use some good smells," he said, giving me a shy, knowing smile. Sarah's flight was late, but when she finally burst through the door at dusk, she yelled, "I brought fancy cheese, and zero clue what it goes with. Let's figure it out." I laughed harder than I had in months. By nightfall, the house felt alive again. Coats tossed over chairs, quiet conversations, the soft hum of people who showed up because they wanted to. The next morning, while I was chopping apples, I heard tiny footsteps. Lily stood in the doorway in her puffy coat, holding a crayon drawing of the house. Grace followed, looking cautious but hopeful. I knelt down. "You really came?" Lily threw her arms around me. "Mom said you're making a real Thanksgiving." Grace smiled, tired but genuine. "She's blunt, but she's right." I showed them the attic room with the round window and the stack of wool blankets Grandpa kept for snowstorms. Lily pressed her face to the glass. "It looks like a snow globe." Exactly what he always said. Later, headlights swept across the windows. Everyone I invited was already here. The car door opened and there he was, Luke, tall, calm, holding a folded piece of paper, dark coat dusted with snow. "I didn't invite you," I said softly. "I know," he answered, handing me the paper. In purple crayon. "Uncle Luke come to Vermont? Aunt Emily needs someone who stays." My eyes filled. "She wrote this." He nodded. "When an 8-year-old tells you someone needs you, you listen." I stepped aside. "Come in." Nobody asked questions. They just pulled out another chair. A tiny miracle. Thanksgiving morning was pure magic. Soft snow falling. The lake half frozen. Laughter bouncing off the walls. Sarah danced around the kitchen to jazz. Ryan and Lily folded napkins into slightly lopsided swans. Aunt Laura guarded the turkey like it was Fort Knox. Even Grace laughed out loud at Sarah's story about airplane pretzels. Luke sat by the fire carving a little wooden fox, glancing up every few minutes like he was making sure I was still okay. By afternoon, the house smelled like heaven. Roast turkey, cinnamon, brown butter, everything good you can imagine. I felt full before we even sat down. We took a big group photo by the window. Lily slipped her hand into mine at the last second. Someone posted it in the extended family chat. 5 minutes later, my phone started blowing up. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Mom, Dad, probably Tyler. They'd seen the picture. They recognized the house. And they weren't in it. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You've earned this. Answer it. I hit speaker. Mom's voice exploded out. Emily, what on earth is going on? Why is everyone in Vermont? Whose house is that? It's mine, I said. Long silence. Dad jumped in. Don't be ridiculous. That's the family estate. It was, I said calmly. Grandpa signed it over to me years ago. Mom's voice went razor sharp. So you just excluded us? You excluded me first, I answered, voice steady. Your text made that pretty clear. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting. I'm not punishing anyone, I went on. I'm just choosing myself for once. Luke stood up, walked over, rested a hand on my shoulder, and took the phone. Mr. and Mrs. Harper, he said evenly. Emily is surrounded by people who choose her every day. If that bothers you, maybe ask yourselves why. No answer. Just stunned breathing. Finally, Dad muttered, we're driving up. Drive safe, I said, and ended the call. The room was quiet for a beat. Then Ryan let out a low whistle. Aunt Laura cupped my face with proud, trembling hands. About time, baby girl. Lily tugged my sleeve. Are you okay? I knelt down and looked her in the eyes. Yeah, sweetheart. For the first time, I really am. Dinner that night was messy and perfect. The turkey was a little lopsided. The mashed potatoes had lumps. Someone knocked over the cranberry sauce. But the laughter was real. The peace was deep. And nobody was waiting for the other shoe to drop. The table was full, and it was mine. The next morning, fresh snow blanketed the steps. I was helping Lily color a wreath for the front door when the doorbell rang. Long and sharp. Sarah peeked out. They're here. I smoothed my sweater, took a breath, and opened the door. Mom and Dad stood on the porch, coats buttoned high, faces pale, eyes darting past me like they were looking for the old version of me they could still control. Emily, Mom said tightly, we need to talk. Alone. I led them into Grandpa's study. Sunlight poured across the old desk, like it was waiting for this exact moment. You blindsided us, Dad started. No, I said, pulling out the folder and laying the deed on the desk. I stopped pretending. Then I told them everything I'd swallowed for 34 years, every time I was pushed aside, every spotlight that moved away from me, every moment I shrank so someone else could shine. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just laid the truth on the table and let it sit there. For once, they had nothing to say. That night we all gathered around the long table again. My chosen family, the ones who showed up because they wanted to. Lily placed her crayon drawing in the center. All of us standing in front of Willow Haven, smiling under a bright orange sun. I looked around at every face and felt something old finally slip away. I wasn't fighting for a seat at their table anymore. I'd built my own. If you've ever had to draw a hard boundary, choose peace over people-pleasing, or build your own table, you're not alone. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about rising, choosing yourself, and becoming whole again, please subscribe. It means the world. See you in the next one.